A bad show for me is probably most of the time something no one else notices. I mean, you just have nights where it can start with something just sonically, like the sound on stage isn't great. You spend the first 3 or 4 songs trying to get that straight in your head. And some nights you find it and you think, oh, this is great now. And some nights you just have to forget about it and just dig in. And it's funny, the shows when I think I'm playing my best, where I'm just, everything I'm doing is just perfect, are almost always the shows when someone afterwards will say, yeah, you were kind of struggling up there tonight, huh? And then the shows when I'm fighting the drum kit all night and nothing feels right, nothing sounds good, and I feel like I'm just chopping wood, that's invariably the night when someone comes back and goes, my God, you've never played better. So even after all this time, I don't know what the difference in that is. I would love to find out the formula for how to enjoy and how to make myself, if I'm playing great, I'd love to know it, because usually when I think I'm really on, that's when someone's looking back at me going, what are you doing back there? So we have a song called Tied Up and Swallowed, and there's a drum break in the middle, and we were in Las Vegas in 1996, and I broke a stick right as the drum break started, and then in my haste to grab another one, I dropped the other one. So I was sitting there with no sticks in my hand, and that was really not a good time to have no sticks. And so for me, it was, and your brain goes into hyperdrive, which puts everything in super slow motion. So in my mind, it took about 40 seconds to get sticks back in my hand and keep playing. It was like one measure at tops where it got a little weird, but no one, like in the house, no one even really noticed probably. The one thing I had going for me was I knew nothing about what I was getting involved in, which is, I'm not trying to be funny. If I had had any concept of what it was going to take for me to get somewhere, I would have never thought about quitting school and doing it because it would have seemed impossible. Everything happens one step at a time, and you have to be, in addition to hopefully being very good and very committed, you've got to have a tremendous amount of good fortune come your way. And you've got to recognize a lucky break when it happens, and you've got to be prepared to deal with it. So there's a lot involved there, and which I don't say to discourage anybody, but it's just a good idea to kind of know. Ultimately, if you want to be a musician, just play and keep playing and love it. And if you don't love it, then do something else, because you have to love it in order to deal with the amount of effort and the amount of hard work it takes and the amount of times that you're going to feel like you're banging your head against the wall. If you don't have a passion for it, then you should find something else to do. I mean, if you want to become a rock star, I have no advice whatsoever. I don't know how we did it, because we wanted to be a band. We didn't want to be rock stars, and we didn't want to be musicians. We just were basically a gang, and we all believed in this thing, but it was sort of an us against the world mentality. We didn't talk about it in linear terms, but I look back now and realize that's what it was. And we were a band that nobody wanted to get near from a record company, and that's okay because we didn't even know how record companies worked. We knew nothing about the industry. The music business meant nothing to us. It was, let's just get club gigs in the Southeast. We had a van we could always borrow, and if somebody was going to give us $200 to play, we'd go. And that was living it to us. I mean, we were like we all sort of saw ourselves as, it was like on the road every day. We had all read all this beat literature, and we all had this sort of counterculture mentality that somewhere between Jack Kerouac and the Replacements, there was a real life that you could still live out there in a band and still experience things. We happened to have a really great singer who had a presence and a charisma that even in the late 80s, not a lot of people at record companies were able to identify. And the one guy who did see us and who did take note ended up signing us and producing our first 2 records. But without him, I can't imagine. We never had a plan, really. So we were in love with the idea of being in this band, and that was our greatest strength. We saw our success as a challenge to then, like in reverse order, well, if we're this really great band now, we've got to prove it. We've got to prove it to ourselves, and we've got to be a better band tomorrow than we are today. And that meant individually and collectively, how we play together, but also we've got to get better at our instruments. I mean, we had a sense of almost kind of guilt at having sold a few million records, and I'd see bands all the time and go, those guys could blow us away. They're just way better players, and that was we took everything as a challenge. And so what gets you into it isn't necessarily what carries you through it. I mean, you have to adapt and change, and your motivations change as well as your goals, and that's just a part of life and growing up. If you're confident with what you're doing, even when you can look back and beat yourself up, but the point is the people who are hearing that and the people who are feeling it, they have a sense, especially from a drummer's chair. If it's all confidence. I mean, if you're waning, if you're not sure where something's going, everyone on stage feels that too, and then everyone in the house feels that. They might not even recognize it for what it is. But to me, it's sort of the driver's seat as the drum kit anyway in a rock band. I was a Beatles fan as a kid, first band I got into, and Ringo was just, and to this day I listen to him, and he has so much great swing and natural feel, and those tracks are all live. Those early Beatles records, that's all live in a room, all together. And the reason bands don't do that now isn't because of technology, it's because they can't. That band was great because they had to be. And to an extent, same with Zeppelin. You listen to those drum tracks, and they're the feel of those. It's all about feel. I mean, Bonham had amazing fills and all this power, and he had all these great things. But to me, those records just feel perfect. That's what drums are supposed to sound like and feel like. And Ringo played the same way to me. Like, they just serve the song. There's more of Bonham's more of a drummer's drummer, but like I said, in between those two guys, that's everything. I've obviously, Bonham's no longer around. If I could talk with him, I don't even know what I'd really say. I would love to just be able to see those sessions go down. I'd love to kind of just see it happen. When that Zeppelin DVD came out and watching the Royal Albert Hall gig, that was enough for me, because what would I say to the guy without looking like an idiot? So I'd probably just keep a tight lid on it and just watch from afar, And as for Ringo Starr, same thing. I wouldn't have any idea. I wouldn't know what to say to any Beatle, much less Ringo. It would just be, thanks for everything, and thanks for molding my brain to be the person I am, I guess, because, I grew up sitting in the basement listening to Beatles records all the time. So I've met a lot of other musicians, and a lot of the guys I've always looked up to, and a lot of my heroes. I've met all of them pretty much, except for any of the Beatles. So I kind of like that. I don't want to ever meet any. There's only two left, but I'm still going to keep in my distance. If the opportunity ever comes up, I'll probably step out of the room. The only guys that are still up on the the pedestal of perfect human beings. I like it that way. Everybody else, way off the pedestal.